For the drawing file for exercise P4-22, first I'm just going to start with the overall piece of this drawing, the part file. The drawing for this is going to be fairly complex, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go to New, come down to my drawing files and grab the ANSI millimeter IDW. Now I'm going to need to use a lot of different views to show all the different features of this particular part. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start with my base view, and I'm going to have to switch the view orientation so that I can get directly looking on, because this is technically my front view based off of this object. So I can finish that custom view, and I'm going to place this view, this view, this view, and I'm going to place an isometric up here, but there's going to be some other views that are going to be required to get all the information. Now, one thing I don't like about any of these views is the hidden lines, because all they do is complicate everything else that's actually on this view. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn off the hidden lines on all the views by going to the parent view and just saying no hidden lines. Now, there's a little bit of discrepancy on this drawing. There's a couple of things that you have to figure out. One thing that you have to figure out: does this rib section exist on the back side of that piece? We can't see it. We don't know for sure. So there's no points taken off if you put it there. There's no points taken off if you don't put it there. That's just a matter of interpretation as to whether it exists. For this example, I have it drawn in. The other thing is the location for these two holes. While they're given a location from here down, this hole is not technically dimensioned the way that it needs to be dimensioned, because a lot of the things that are going on in this particular drawing don't make any sense. For example, having this dimensioned out here to a point, that's not going to happen. Nobody's ever going to do that. That's only done in the textbook to make it easier for you to draw, but that's not how it needs to be dimensioned for the purposes of what we're doing, and I'll explain some better ways to dimension that. Now, the thing of it is I need to look at this and make a determination. Are there any other views that I need to create to make this easier to see, easier to visualize, and easier to understand? And for this particular object, I'm going to say let's go with these views that we have right here, and then if we need to add additional views, then we can very easily add them. First thing I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to the Annotate tab, and I'm going to go to my center lines. And I'm going to place center lines on all the things that I need to dimension based on the center of where they are. So here we have these center lines, and I'm going to throw an additional one in right here, because that is going to be the easiest way to get the location for this particular piece. So that's going to clear up any confusion that we have based off of any of the book dimensions. So now I can begin to actually dimension this stuff. So what I'm going to do is, I have a big sheet of paper here. I'm going to make an attempt to actually utilize more of the sheet by spacing my views out just a little bit. If I need to move them to accommodate another view or potentially get some additional information in, I'll do that. But for right now, I'm just going to go with the way they are. So now, in looking at this view right here, I'm going to go to dimension, and I want to dimension from this point to the center of this, which is 45. I want to go from here to the top of this, which in this case is also drawn in at 45. But you can see based off of the book that this is supposed to be 40 from the other side. So this is a situation where we've got a little bit of geometry that's not exactly correct. If I come back over here to the part file, this is the only way to modify it, is to go to the sketch, and I'm going to change this right here to 40 millimeters, and where this 42 is coming from, I'm not 100% sure. I didn't actually do this file. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete this 42, and then I'm going to set up a parallel constraint between here and here, which will lock it in. Now I can go ahead and finish that sketch, and everything should update accordingly. Next, I'm going to go back over to my drawing file, and we can see that this piece is now moved up a little bit further to where it's supposed to be. So now I can go ahead and finish dimensioning. I want the top of this to the top of here, so that's 40. And I also need to this hole, which is a dimension that I'm not previously given, 64.18. That dimension's really not going to work too well for what I'm doing, but that's really the only way to get this in here unless we actually modify the geometry of the actual part. The reason is, when this is laid out, it's not going to be laid out in a point, because typically this is going to be a machined piece, so that machine is going to be looking for a center point for where it actually needs to do its work. I can't give it a point that doesn't exist because it'll never be able to actually machine this. So we're going to go with the 64.18 for now, just because that's going to be the easiest way to do this at the moment. So now I'm also going to go from here down to my center point, which should be 100, and it's coming up 100.14. So I can go back over into here and fix that. It's probably going to be in this extrusion right here. If I go to sketch 4, I can see that this is dimensioned at 100, but to the center it's dimensioned at 100.142, and that should be 100. Basically the end point of this line and the center point didn't line up, so I can go ahead and finish that sketch. This is a situation where it's always best if you work very meticulously to the actual dimensions that you're working with, because you can see I now have another little problem. Again, this is not a part file that I generated. In a lot of situations you can get into trouble by using part files that you didn't create, because sometimes you find mistakes, but in finding mistakes we also learn how to fix these mistakes. So I can see that this thing here has a diameter of 30. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to redraw this circle so that it does match up to the edge, and then I'm going to finish this sketch. And you'll notice what's going to happen is it's going to tell me that it has a failed feature now. So I just need to go into this extrusion and edit that feature. There's the part, that's okay. Now I need to come over here to this extrusion, and I'm actually going to delete this extrusion and use the hole command to recreate that hole. During the drawing process, it's very easy to find mistakes. When you find mistakes during the drawing process, the very best thing that you can do for yourself is to actually go through and fix those mistakes. Now when I switch back over to here, this dimension is no longer valid. You can see the pink line. That means that that center line was placed to geometry that no longer exists. So I'm going to recreate my center line on this piece and redimension it. And now the new dimension, if everything else in that sketch is right, should come up at exactly 100. Now I can dimension this, and here we see another example where the dimension isn't necessarily 100% correct. It's very important that everything you do in this software, that you dimension everything fully. This is a situation where actually one of my main rules is being violated. If you notice all the green geometry that exists here, that says that it's not fully constrained. What that means is that I'm going to have problems with this the entire time. Now I've got 30, I can go to my hole and thread note, dimension that, that's a diameter of 18 through hole. Now the dimension across here, this is another dimension that's going to be a little bit tricky. So at this point there's a lot of different things we can do. First I want to start putting in some of the dimensions for the actual hole features and stuff like that that exist on here. But to get this information right here, I can put a center line on here, which is going to kind of intersect with my part a little bit, so that's not going to be really the best way to do it. So I'm going to undo that, and I'm going to do a dimension from this endpoint to this quadrant, and that should come up at 80. And then since I know where this is, I know how big this is, I know where this is, all I want to do is come in here and place an angular dimension between here and here, which is going to come up at 30.5 degrees, and that is going to give me exactly what I need to be able to create this object. Now, realistically speaking, since I have this dimension, if I put a radius dimension on this piece of 15, then you know that all you got to do is line up a diameter 30 circle on the 80 millimeter mark and then draw your line down. So we'll omit that. Between this line and this line, we need to make sure that we note that these things are parallel in some way. And rather than go in and do a whole bunch of other stuff as far as the geometric dimensioning and tolerancing and all that other stuff, one of the easiest ways to do this is to just put a note or a leader off of here. So I'm just going to go with leader text off of here and just put parallel, if I spelled that correctly, and then another leader right off of there. Okay, so we've got our two leaders that say parallel. You can also use some geometric dimensioning and tolerancing, create this as a datum edge, reference this as being parallel or vice versa, but either way you're going to get the appropriate information. Next thing I need to do is some dimensioning for this object. I know that this thing is 50 deep, and I know that from this back edge to here it's 65. So that's going to cover a lot of the dimensions that I need for that piece. I now have enough information to go ahead and move on to another view. I do want to put a centerline bisector in between here and here, just to show that it is a center line. I'm going to do a lot of other dimensioning over here. So we're going to dimension between here and here is 8. The entire height of this is 38. The height of this section right here is 30. The overall height up to here is 70. I need the dimension between the edge and how far back inset this thing is. To get that, I'm just going to extend this center line down. That way I can just place my dimension between, okay, my dimension command just quit working. Not exactly sure why my dimension command quit working, but it did. So at this point I'll go ahead and just describe some of the other things that need to happen on here. This view right here, it's kind of difficult to see all the features on this back piece. So one of the things that we can do, rather than using this view here, is we can come in here. I accidentally went into sketch mode, that's why dimensions quit working. So with dimensioning, I can dimension this piece out to here. I already have all the dimensions I need for this. Getting back to this view is slightly difficult to see all the detail. So what I can do is I'm going to come in here and I'm going to delete this view. Now it's going to say, do I want to delete view 1 and its dependents? I'm going to click on here and say, no, I do not want to delete the dependent views. That way these views still exist. Now I can come in here and I'm actually going to do a section view. So I'll go back to place views, section, and I'm going to cut this section through right here. By cutting that section through right there, it removes a lot of the information that is being hidden by the front half of this piece. So now I can see the thickness of this, which is the same as here. I see a small portion over here, but mainly I can see everything in here that I need to dimension. So between this view and this view, I can go ahead and finish dimensioning all the additional features that exist on this part. Once you're done with all of those dimensions, again, you're just going to come up here to the big I, which is the application menu, export to PDF, and you're going to be turning in the PDF file.